Hello, and welcome to Varn Blog, and today we're going to talk about political and economy in your everyday life, or how the algorithm affects things. Because sometimes these meta-analysis of what I actually do explain things that are happening to you right now. For the beginning of this year, one of the programs I use to record these streams and cast added a function that allowed me to very easily go in and create shorts. 30 seconds to a minute and a half, little pieces that were cut ups of interviews and other things that I did that were clearly meant to tease the full interview are these kind of videos here. Now, for the longest time, I have taken a stance of standing against what we may call the dominant paradigm of shortification, the principle of keep it simple, stupid, turning into inshitification, and trying to explain complex phenomenon with multiple causes by very reductive things like, oh, we can explain the crime rates of the 70s and 80s by lead poisoning, which was super common about a decade and a half ago in liberal circles. I used to hear it all the time, and you really can't. All right. There's stronger correlations to deindustrialization. Also, that crime rate doesn't just stop overnight with the de-leadification of gas and lead in the general atmosphere, etc., etc., etc. Now, that might seem of way more stakes than what I'm currently talking about, but when I made these shorts, I would post them up and I would get some of the most horrific comments. And I went through this whole social searching thing, trying to figure out why my long videos, I'd get pushback, but it was pushback from people who actually engaged with it and watched it. They may not have understood all of it, but maybe it was because I didn't explain it well, or maybe we had an opposed ideology. There's, 1,000 reasons why, but they were generally smart and the people engaged with them and they wanted to engage with them. Even if they were of different ideological bents, they wanted to be here. But when I started making shorts, I started getting more and more comments that were just insults. Didn't explain what they were responding to, didn't ask questions. And I go and do a little bit of market research, because it's really easy to do when someone posts their account name, and look at them and see what these people were watching, and they would be like lifting channels and conservative channels, etc. And I was talking to Jason Miles on one of his Jason Fun Movie Weekends that we do, that I sometimes participate in. And it occurred to me that I'd also seen the same thing on TikTok and on Instagram videos, that increasingly people were getting hostile comments. And what I realized is the negative partisanship we saw in Twitter, where people went on Twitter to be angry, and this is a pre-Elon Musk taking over phenomenon. It just got way worse after Elon. Expanded dramatically into these video platforms, because I wasn't getting people to watch the main video by these shorts. I was getting people trolling me, basically, by these shorts. People who at first I thought maybe, these are the people who just frankly don't have the attention span to watch a 15-minute to 3-hour video that's mostly talking heads and looks a little bit like a Zoom screen, even if it's designed specifically for you to listen to it and not necessarily watch it, because why do you need to look at my face the whole time? I don't do neat video essays with the Adam Curtis style tricks that can convince you I made an argument by flashing an image in front of you to paper over the fact that it's just a vibe that I invoked and you didn't really notice that I didn't actually make my point. Adam Curtis does substantive documentaries with this, but that style has been dominating YouTube video essays for a while, and it's a way to also flash over that you didn't actually prove what you were setting out to prove. And since I don't do that, and since I have taken on YouTube in specific, sometimes to my own detriment, a kind of anti-production, monetization stance, and particularly this platform. That's actually not true as much on my audio platforms, where I will occasionally take certain ads or participate in programs, as long as they don't dictate my content. Now, I bring this up because what I realized talking to Jason Miles is that people are training the algorithm, and the algorithm realizes that this will keep you online, that negative engagement keeps people addicted to short material, so they will stay on it more to get more ads. And if you're using that short material as an ad for your thing, whatever that is, whether it's a political radio show or whatever, you're not going to get a lot from that. You'll get a lot of engagement, and that will increase your position in the algorithm for those shorts. But people are training the algorithm, and the algorithm is being trained by people outside of it to reward negative engagement. And so instead of even getting interesting pushback that could generate other videos or I could respond on, I was just getting insults, and I would ignore them. It doesn't really matter, but it wouldn't change the trajectory of the attached videos. It wouldn't even lead to that many more subscriptions, because people are engaged in a purely negative way. And this made me realize, even when you're not monetized, these algorithms are not necessarily here to help you promote your content. They're here to help people stay on the apps to watch commercials. Your content's irrelevant to that. Whether you're unmonetized like me and thus deprioritized in the algorithm, or you are monetized, that's gonna not change. And you see these kind of perverse incentives throughout. Now, you can't do something about it. I have trained my TikTok not to throw stuff at me that I don't want. I don't like negative engagement bait. I noticed this was also happening on X/Twitter, where a lot of the biggest accounts are negative engagement accounts or absurd accounts, and I used to complain about that. And I realized, like, no, that was to keep me engaged in a platform that may help me in some ways, but in general didn't lead to that much more engagement on what I actually do here. What I actually do spreads best word of mouth, with links to the audio shows and to the Patreon. And while my Patreon has not exploded lately, the market for Far Left content has declined, although it has picked back up a little bit, because it's counter-cyclic and thermostatic to general politics. When you have a left-wing president, left-wing in quotation marks, you have some namby-pamby centrist liberal milquetoast president like you did with Biden, you're going to see an increase in right-wing content. When Trump is in power, you're going to see an increase in left-wing content. If you look at the media trends from 2016 to 2020 and 2020 to 2024, and then see what's trending back up now, Midas Touch, the Bulwark, etc., you can tell that there's a difference in demeanor and tone from the woke, anti-woke left debates of 2016 to 2022. But in general, this content is counter-cyclic, and it's based on negative engagement with society. And if you're like me and doing educational content that isn't about the same kind of negative engagement, then it just doesn't really play for you. And I have a critic of mine who's always asking me to, like, go after these things more, call it the hypocrisies more, it would do you better. And I'm like, it would just put me in the same circle. I mean, Josh Harley does that, and then he votes for the bill that's literally a billionaire asset grab in the budget. I don't know why people think that these superficial holding people are accountable does anything systemically other than get views. You need a more activated populace, and you're not going to get a return to mass politics, because mass politics only happens in times of severe crisis. And while we are in crisis, we are not in crisis with millions of people dying in the core countries that the media is being made in, at least not yet. Now, some of these things are old media principles. If it breeds, it leads. But some of these things are new. That engagement on eyes for ads is based on a whole series of assumptions. And if we're honest, a lot of that, even those ad money, is drying up. There's less and less of it floating around. Um, a lot of small business ventures was essentially drop shipping things. There, the tariffs have really complicated that. Um, Production, if it comes back here, and by the way, it's never really been gone away. Like I said, we've been the second or third most productive economy for my entire life since China overtook us from being the first. It's not the amount of industrial produce that throughput that we make, or industrial things that we make here. It's the fact that it's automated. Automation was the big thing to replace offshoring, and even as early as the Obama and late George W. Bush administrations, we actually saw reshoring of a lot of industries. The American steel industry started producing again, but with much, much less worker capacity. All right. So, where is all this going to end economically? I don't know. And I'm going to talk about some complications there. I've been really thinking about this in terms of AI and the reduction of entry level jobs and the severe overproduction of people for market allocation, the inability for market allocation to make sense right now, um, because even the people deciding who and what to fire have had a hard time nailing it down what they need. So you've had rounds of firing and rehiring that are finally just become firings. But even then, we don't know what and how this is all going to play out. What we've seen is a general acceleration of trends that predate, LLM based artificial intelligence and COVID. And between COVID and LLM based artificial intelligence, they've all accelerated. So social media is likely to get desperate to keep eyes on the prize, as it seems like a lot of its engagement is declining in general, not just, on Twitter, which has gotten profitable by stripping down, not by increasing its market share. By Facebook, which is kind of a dinosaur, by the various instabilities with TikTok, which keep getting delayed. No one really knows what the future of social media is going to be. And so you're going to see these things get more and more weird in the way they try to keep eyes on the prize here. And you can train the algorithm to respond to you yourself. You can. But in general, it's going to probably be based on more and more negative engagement because that keeps people on. Now, what productive economy underlies this? You got to remember, just like with AI, there's massive water farms and electricity going through it. How efficient it is not isn't clear yet. I've seen radically different estimates with radically different empirical inputs. Some debunkings, even by AI skeptics, have been overly optimistic on efficiency gains from AI, but they might be realized eventually. We just don't know. But we are in an economy, at least at this time in 2025, where the unemployment rate for college grads is actually worse than the general unemployment rate, and the general unemployment rate is eking up slowly, and it might increase. The kind of apocalypses that liberals said were going to come haven't come, but now they have any gains that critics of liberals and conservatives are even, Marxists who are friendly with Trump, productivists, have predicted either. It just isn't happening that way. And as I like to point out, since we're still dealing with decisions made in the 70s on the economy now, or decisions made geopolitically in the 1920s on geopolitics now, it is unlikely to be clear during even maybe my lifetime what all the effects of this are going to be. But we can tell you this, we're seeing more and more perverse incentives. So am I going to make shorts? Well, probably not political ones. And since the shorts that I enjoy are comedic, are whatever, they'll have their own lifespan. But if I was going to look at, say, D&D communities or community of tabletop gamings, the odds aren't great. So if you looked at that media lifestyle, you started out with people promoting stuff, doing positive reviews, talking about how to run, enabling people to play the game. Then there were scandals, and then the scandals drove the algorithm takes. And then eventually, even the scandals couldn't continue driving the algorithm takes because both real ones and fake ones were promoted so much that everything seemed like clickbait, and clickbait became less and less successful. So the algorithm things that make you grow, I used to argue with my publisher about this, who made clickbait titles for some of the videos that I made for Zero Books back in the day. And I would say it'll make you grow in the long term and it'll get a lot of views initially, but then you won't have any payoff for it later on because it doesn't work with the same audience forever, and the audiences it works on are limited. And I would get no response to that. So these perverse incentives are looming. What they mean for us in terms of political economy is that maybe things are drying up and we're going to see a lot more attempts to increase income of the very wealthy at like pure parasitic expense because productivity is just harder and harder to do. And that's going to have weird downstream effects like undercutting your producers of content on a content platform to get eyes to stay involved through negative engagement, even if it's not helping the people making the content for you at all. So why would they continue to work for you in the long run? So I don't make shorts anymore. Like and subscribe, hit the bell. I'd like to thank my $10 and $15 patrons. There's more behind the patron wall. And you can see we're relocating. I've been packing this up. It's probably going to be a few months of videos where you see progressively me dismantling the studio and office. And so you will see that. I'd like to thank my patrons because they also enabled me to replace my equipment. A lot of my equipment apparently was damaged by electrical surges when my kitchen was flooded 4 months ago. By the time you see this, it would have been 6 months ago. I am relocating and I've bought new equipment, and you guys have really helped me be able to do that. Thank you. We are not monetized in this channel, and we're only vaguely monetized on the free podcast channel. So if you want to support us, support our Patreon. And if you don't have the money, and we have, like I said, people might have less and less money these days, share and share alike, because as long as I can, I'm going to keep putting these on some platform for free for you guys to educate yourselves with. Take care.